The freedom of falling deeply in love with Jesus, of falling into the soil of dying to and denying self, putting self last. This is what we're getting into. Excited to be here with you. I love Notes. So grateful and welcome back. If you got time to stay to the end of the video, we're going to be getting into the details of what this thing looks like to walk in self-denial, to walk in selflessness instead of selfishness. Jesus says it like this. They tried to corner him and hem him up a little bit. And they were like, well, let's set him up here with this deeply intriguing theological question. And they're like, what's the greatest law of them all? And what they were getting at is the fact that there's over 613 laws in the Old Testament. So they're trying to set him up because Jesus is the law. And even though they didn't believe he was Jesus, they believed that. So to suggest that one of them was above the other, that would be straight up like that would be like they would say blasphemy, and so Jesus, he's knowing what they're doing because he's Jesus. He knows the thoughts, he knows the desire, and he's like, all right, I got you. You want to set me up, huh? Well, let me tell you what the greatest law of them all is: to love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And second, so he doesn't put it above. Did you catch that? He says second is to love your neighbor. Love your neighbor the way you love yourself. What he was saying is you're really good at loving yourself. So go ahead and take that heart posture and turn it loose on all the people that are in your life and make it about loving them first. Do that, and then you're going to see what real freedom is. Then you're going to actually walk in the truth, the gravity-free zone of intimacy, of knowing God well and deeply. And that's what we're kind of unlocking this week. We're walking through this precipice of the Passion Week. It's the precursor. It's the building up of the Passion Week. And right here in John's Gospel, chapter 12, let's go ahead and start in verse 20. And the word of the Lord reads, it says, now there were certain Greeks among them who came up to worship at the feast. And then they came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and asked him, saying, sir, we wish to see Jesus. Jesus was drawing a big crowd at this time. He was bringing in a lot of numbers. In fact, the word had gotten out of all the things that he was doing, feeding 20-something thousand people with some Lunchables. He was getting after it. So much great truth inside of all that. And so verse 22, Philip came and told Andrew, and in turn, Andrew and Philip told Jesus. But Jesus, this is verse 23, and this is where we're going to really jump in. Jesus knew what they were trying to do. These people had selfish agendas and motives. They had ulterior angles. There was things that they were coming after. They wanted to get information about where Jesus' whereabouts was because there was a very influential group of Pharisees that were from the Sanhedrin that were chasing him down to try to kill him. And why? Well, we saw it in the gospel. They were like, if we don't stop this man, and I'm paraphrasing, Corey Standard Version, but they were basically saying, if we don't stop this man, he's going to take our position. He's going to take our jobs. They loved having the high honor and esteem in society. They loved the name they loved their name being next to Jesus, but they didn't actually want to be next to Jesus. That's good stuff right there. They didn't actually want to be next to Jesus. They just loved the benefits of the name of Jesus. The same that was true to all these people, these masses that were following him everywhere he was going. They weren't interested in him. They were interested in what he could do for them, what they could get out of him. And I got to be transparent with you. This was me most of my life. I grew up in the church, in and out over the years. And, I even went to Christian private school. I went to the right schools, the right family. I had all this stuff. But my life fell deep into addiction and sin and all that felonies, all that implies. By the grace of God, he chose to step down into my mess. It was so messy, y'all. And he fixed me from the inside out. He rebirthed me. He birthed me again. He allowed me to become alive. The thing that I had missed is that I didn't have intimacy with God. I was a pastor for 8 years in ministry. Some of it was full-time, some of it was bivocational, but I was a pastor and I was not saved. I did not know Jesus. A couple of years out of that 8 years, I actually even had my own church, but I did not know Jesus. This is good stuff right here. Why? Because I had not fallen into the soil and died to self yet. I didn't fall. Jesus is about to tell us one of the most amazing truths that you'll ever hear. And this is a truth that I had not come face to face with, that my life was going to be really beautiful when it stopped being about me. when I stopped being my own God, I could actually fall under the true and living God. I could actually get saved. You know, the thing about salvation is you can't be saved until you realize you need to be saved. And don't get too religious on that statement. I'm not saying literally, but what I'm saying is that we need to be under God. We need to be under his cover and under his power and his grace and his mercy, under his love. We need to be underneath it. But we can't get under his love until we get over ourselves. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about here. And I didn't find Jesus until I finally got over myself. You know, addiction did a really good job of teaching me how helpless I was. And so many horrific things came from that season of addiction, the years of that 10 years of my life. But some beautiful truths came out of the other side of it because of Jesus stepping in, because of him stepping into my mess. I had completely destroyed everything in my life. I had destroyed every relationship. And by the grace of God, my wife hung on. You know, she hung on. By the grace of God, she hung on for me. She didn't have to. She didn't have to. I had broken her heart into a million pieces. And it's really beautiful because by the grace of God, she hung on and she got to watch God save my life. And it's been a very beautiful story. I've been saved just under 6 years now. And but, you know, I have a lot of history with God and a lot of time in the church. And so even though I wasn't saved in those years that I was in ministry and I was in the church, it was not wasted time. It was all an education for me. It was all stuff that God was using along the way to equip me, even in my fallen condition. And he's still doing so today, by the way, because the process is far from over. We will be in process until we get home to glory, but that's okay. It's good news because we're on the potter's wheel. Put that in the chat. We're in the potter's wheel. And so Jesus is about to break open his truth for us. He's going to talk about the power of dying to and denying self. And so we're kind of just setting the stage here today. Until next time, y'all stay blessed, and we'll see you soon.